Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Home Care Hot Seat. Today I'm joined by Lynn Laughland, the founder and managing director of HRM Homecare Services. She'll be talking to me about the launch of her business from her living room in 1994 and how she transformed it into one of the largest care providers serving vulnerable people across central and west Scotland. Lynn will also be chatting to me about her hopes for the next Scottish Government when it's elected next month and her thoughts on the proposed National Care Service. So I just wanted to start by asking you about your company and the history of your company. For those who don't know, you launched HRM Homecare Services back in 1994 from your living room. Could you just tell me about that background and what inspired the decision to launch your company?
So my background was originally in medical sciences. I trained as a state registered medical microbiologist and I did medical microbiology and public health and worked for a number of years in the NHS actually. And then after that I became a college lecturer delivering mainly science related and health related subjects. So I was sort of inspired to set up HRM after I had completed maternity leave. I had 3 young children under the age of 4 and I returned to work to find other people taking my classes and I felt I had no job security at that time. So then I decided that I really wanted to have more control in my life and it would be better if I could set up some sort of business myself because at least then I would have absolute control of my destiny. You know, I was relatively young at the time too, so that was quite important to me that I had no real career control at that time.
Yeah, and why home care?
So the home care was, I'd wanted to be a social worker when I left school, but I was quite academic at school and my father encouraged me to go and do sciences instead because he thought a science degree was a better degree for a woman. Right. So he really said, you know, you really want to get a good degree under your belt and I think that would be a better career choice for you. But I rapidly understood from right from the beginning of that job that was looking down a microscope every day. It wasn't talking to people, it wasn't communicating with people, and it really wasn't me. I'm quite an extrovert personality and I definitely found that really wasn't my vocation in life. And while I was off in maternity leave, my mum works in the local authority and she told me that they were going to look at privatising or outsourcing what had always been kind of home health services. And I had actually been looking, this was my second attempt at a business because I started a baby hire business first, you know, hiring out baby equipment because I was desperate to have my own business. So I then spent about a year looking into this area that my mum had explored, and then at that time too I was looking after a couple of elderly neighbours, so I felt as if I was being drawn back to some sort of caring role really.
Okay, so you started looking after your neighbours and then slowly you decided, oh, there's something in this. Yeah,
there's something in this, and I spent a year. In Scotland the Business Gateway system allows you to do training, so they offer modular short courses and all sorts of areas of business subjects. So when my youngest daughter was just in her first year of life, I did all the Business Gateway programs about running your own business, how to understand finance and accounts, and as part of that I did the market research. Then I started to try and set up the structures for the business because at that time you could register with a regional authority and I registered with Strathclyde Regional Council to do care services, to tender for care work.
Okay.
So that's how I got into the, you know, delivering for local authority services. I think I was actually the last company to register before Strathclyde Regional Council was disbanded to form the new local authorities.
And where did the business name HRM Homecare Services come from?
So that's actually my children's initials of their names.
Oh.
My son's the oldest, but he's squashed in the middle between his 2 sisters because the alphabet, you know, when people are searching for a business, R would have been too far down the list.
Right.
HRM. I feel about it now, they've all grown up and they're still, you know, this company's called after them.
Oh, I'm sure they think it's great. It's a legacy for them, isn't it? So when you without having that experience of previously running a business, you've talked a little bit about, you know, where you learn how to, you know, develop your company, but could you expand more on that?
So I had obviously an academic leaning when I was at school, and I got a degree in microbiology and applied biology, but it became very clear when I came into the industry that it was much more complex than I had anticipated. And, you know, that complexity means that you have to provide care to people that have got complex care needs. So I've always wanted to learn, and I found it quite frustrating that I was working alongside people who perhaps didn't offer the same level of respect because I didn't have the same qualifications. So I went back to university and I've completed lots of studies. I have a master's degree in social work and a master's degree in dementia studies, and I did a lot of leadership training programs, and I spent 2 years as a student social worker while I was running my care services.
Wow.
That was pretty challenging to do that, because by that point I'd been running my own business for about 14 years, and then to be a student social worker in a local authority social work team, that was quite a challenge. Process, and that really cemented all my skills and knowledge, because I'm now, I feel, on a level playing field with local authority staff as well.
You really dedicated your life to it then.
Yeah, but it's quite clear that I had, and I also completed a lot of counselling studies as well, because I've always wanted to work with people and demonstrate a level of empathy, because I think in the industry that we work in, it's about empathy and compassion, and understanding what people are looking for and the types of supports that they get in life. I think that's really important, because there's a lot of talk now about how technology will change care services, but actually for me it's about combining both. It's about the empathy and the compassion and how we deliver the culture that's created, as well as, you know, using technological solutions to improve people's lives.
Absolutely, yeah. So fast forward 27 years, and HRM is now one of the largest home care providers in Central and West Scotland. Could you tell me about the structure of the business now, and how many branches you have, and the size of your workforce?
So the business is structured, I'm managing director, obviously. I have 2 directors, and each of them have responsibilities across the business. So one is responsible for the operational activity in the business, and they're supported by operational managers, service managers, and care teams, coordinators and frontline staff. We also have a wellness team, because I think that's really important, to look more holistically at what supports people require in life, not just that delivery of the care service. And the other director is responsible for all other business aspects, so IT, HR, finance, and business improvement, business quality. We've got about just over 300 staff now, and we work across 9 local authority areas, and we've really tried to support staff in hubs, so large geographical hubs rather than branches in every local authority area, because I think the type of services we deliver, that the staff require a lot of support to deliver that, and it's better to have bigger hubs around them than smaller services. Yeah.
So you mainly, is it just local authority work that you do, or do you offer any kind of private paid?
So private services too, but in Scotland the landscape's slightly different. We have 3 personal care in Scotland, so by far most care providers will be working with local authority contracts. But obviously the aim is to provide support services to anyone who wants to have those services, and under self-directed support, people want to have the choice of what services they use. That's really important.
And how did you manage to scale up the business to the size it is now? It can't have been easy.
Lots of hard work, lots of academic studies. It's really about understanding what commissioners were looking for, and I think the important thing is that although you've got the practical experience, all those years of academic studies have really cemented for us what the local authority commissioners are looking for, you know, and particularly in different client groups, what are the specific challenges and issues in dealing with supporting people that come from that group. So I think that's what's helped us to scale up the business. We're very successful at tendering. We put a lot of hard work and effort into those responses, and it's paid off all those years of hard work and studies, really. That have worked well.
So going back to COVID, how has your business been affected by the pandemic, and how did you adapt to those challenges?
So I think all businesses have been affected, particularly in this sector. I think we were in a fortunate position because of the scientific background that I have. I kind of saw what was on the horizon, and we really wanted to prepare for COVID. So we ordered PPE supplies well in advance. We started infection control processes and practices. You know, we temperature checked everyone coming near our offices. We socially distanced all our staff right from the outset because of the background that I had. And as a result, you know, from March to September last year, having delivered over 250,000 services, we had no people with COVID at all. And that's over 800 service users. So, you know, I think we did really relatively well in the circumstances.
That's some achievement.
It was, yeah, I'm quite proud of that actually.
Yeah, you should be. Did you see a rise in demand as a result of, you know, what was happening, the tragic thing that was happening in care homes? Did you see people come to you and say, we want an alternative?
Not initially, no. I think a lot of people, the response initially was panic to cancel services and not retain services, and we worked very hard to try and retain services and supports because, you know, it's people require that level of care, and withdrawing services is maybe not necessarily appropriate at that time in their life to do that. So I think now what we're seeing is an increase in demand for care at home services, most definitely.
Do you offer any live-in care services at all?
Yes, we do, and we've seen an increase in that too, and I think that is a trend that will continue. I think a lot of people are quite concerned really about what has happened during the COVID pandemic and the sort of, you know, the difficulties in seeing family who've perhaps been in care homes.
Yeah, I'm seeing that across quite a few providers actually. So what did you make of the support given to the social care sector and home care in particular from the government, from the central and then local authorities as well?
Well, I think like all governments, they've all had issues, and I think what has happened, our experience has been that we've been well supported with PPE. I appreciate there were difficulties at the beginning, but I think that we have seen a steady flow of support, and what has come out of this is how well local authorities and governments have worked together to collaborate and improve things. And, you know, lessons learned has been a useful position for all of us, because who could have responded immediately when we weren't really prepared as a nation? And I'm talking about the UK nation. I don't think any parts of the UK were as well prepared as they could have been. But I think the lessons learned, I'll certainly make sure that doesn't happen again.
A lot of UK providers said that, well, in England in particular, a lot of the funding didn't get to the providers from the local authorities straight away when they needed it. Did you experience that in Scotland?
I think we all have experienced the same thing, really. I think it's just taken a lot. I think because of their structures and the accountability, things naturally take longer to come out to providers, and I think the lessons learned have been that we have to move quicker. As many authorities have moved very quickly to pay invoices up front, for instance, to providers to try and ensure their sustainability, and I think those lessons need to continue into the future.
And speaking of politics, what do you believe should be the biggest social care priorities for the next government when they're elected in May?
I think after 30 years of research, what we need to get to is better pay, better terms and conditions, fairer commissioning practice, and we need to do it all now. And, you know, hopefully the stepping stones are now in place, but, you know, the sort of elephant in the room is always funding, and we need to now address that as a society. you know, and the public too need to be involved in encouraging that the right decision to be made, because COVID has brought to the fore the real importance of social care, but also the economic importance of social care, because we've really got an opportunity here to see social care as an economic contributor to Scotland. And I think, you know, what we want to see all the reform work do is to get us to a place where it's an attractive occupation, and that when people come into this industry to work, that they stay there because they're well rewarded, they're well trained, and we can then prove that we deliver quality care services.
Mm-hmm. You've said recently how you welcome the independent review that recommends a national care service. What benefits do you think that will bring to providers and the workforce, and also the clients that you look after?
So I've been lucky enough to be involved in 2 of the Scottish Government's work streams around fair work and effective voice. So I think, I'm hoping that that will help improve the level of care that is provided, the level of choice that's provided, because what those work streams are trying to do is to address the you know, better pay, better terms and conditions, better commissioning practice, and ultimately that will benefit the people who are receiving care services, because it'll be a much more open and transparent sector and industry, and you'll not have workers moving from one part of the industry where their pay is better to another part. You know, we'll have some parity, we'll have equity, and I think the National Care Service will bring that to the table.
Some leaders in the sector argue that councils have strong links to providers and communities, and then that could be lost if you know, care is centrally controlled. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it'll ever be it'll not be centrally delivered. It'll be locally delivered, and it'll still be the same local organisations delivering those services. They'll still have local relationships with local people. You know, as I move into a new area, I'm looking to recruit local people who live in that area, so that people build, you know, familiar relationships with people that they get to know them. That won't change. So centralising services doesn't necessarily mean centralising everything. I think what we're talking about here is the top line strategic aims, you know, the better pay, better training, better conditions for the workforce, and fairer commissioning for the providers.
Do you think that they will appoint a care minister?
I hope that they do, because then it will be given the significance that it requires. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you think the National Care Services has the potential to solve, you know, this crisis in social care?
I hope so, because, you know, we have to recognise what stops people from coming into the sector, and a National Care Service will address all these key issues, you know, the pay scales, the differentials, the skill level required, the training. It'll develop career progression pathways, it'll make it an attractive industry. And that's not something that has been achieved previously, because it's fragmented just now. And hopefully by having this type of attention on a national framework, we will start to overcome these challenges.
Mm-hmm. Can I just ask you about the register for social care workers in Scotland? Because England's the only country in the UK that hasn't introduced this. Could you tell me about how that has benefited you or not, and how it's benefited the sector and the people working in it?
Yeah, well, I think what it's done is has built some accountability into job roles, and with that has ensured that there's an education and skills framework that sits alongside those job roles. And I think that's important to professionalise an industry and to recognise the skills of the people who work in that industry.
Do you think that it's encouraged people to see the value in social care workers now that they're registered?
I think it's encouraged people to see the value, but I think it lets the workforce see that they are valued too. And, you know, and historically they haven't felt very valued. I think through the COVID pandemic, the sense of self-worth and self-esteem has grown with care workers because they've been recognised as key workers. And I think that's a really important thing for people who work in this industry and in this sector.
Okay, thank you. Changing the subject now, you've been a keen champion for women in business for a long time. How do you support them and how do you advise them, especially those working in the care sector?
So really it's about mentoring people and being available to people, you know, that perhaps are looking for assistance. That, you know, I started my business 27 years ago. It wasn't an easy journey, and I think when you realise how long it takes you to develop the right mindset and skill set in running a business, then you can share that experience with people, and it can be quite a lonely and isolating position running your own business too. So it's helpful to share your time with other people who are perhaps in the same situation as you had been in.
What kind of advice would you give to someone now that's hoping to maybe start a career in the care sector?
Well, I think there's great opportunities for women in the care sector. It's always difficult for women, particularly with young families, to get started in business because there's so many competing priorities on their time. And this is a sector that is open to women coming into the sector. And I think it's really important that we recognise that entrepreneurial women are necessary in our society, because that's what creates wealth and that's what creates, you know, jobs in local economies and in local areas. And it's really important that we encourage as many people as possible to start businesses, particularly if you look at the developments in the future with artificial intelligence. You know, there's lots of jobs, areas of work that are going to be eradicated in the future, and we want to be encouraging as many people as possible to come into this sector. It's very worthwhile, great sense of job satisfaction, and you know, it's a thriving sector, fastest growing service sector in the world. So, you know, and there's lots and lots of people who require care supports, and you would want to be working alongside people. It really makes you feel good at the end of the day when you've helped somebody improve their life outcomes or improve the longevity of their life, or, you know, these things do matter.
Absolutely. What would you say some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in building your care business, and would you do anything differently if you could go back and do it all again?
I think I would learn to delegate more effectively, quicker, because I think that's been a hard lesson for myself. I always try to do things right, and sometimes I take longer than I need to do it because I think I have to do it myself. But I think, what would I do differently? I think I would talk more to other businesses in the sector that we operate in. It can be quite fragmented, and I think there's a lack of trust amongst providers that are providing these services. But actually, it's important that we all talk together and we learn from each other, and I think share experiences, because, you know, it is a challenging environment that we work in with a lot of people with complex care needs, and it's important that we work together to help each other out.
You've all got the same goal at the end of the day, haven't you?
We're all trying to do things well and to look after people well, and if we were to share more, I think we would learn about ourselves as well as each other's businesses.
Could you tell me about your plans for home care and for HRM Homecare Services going forward over the next year, in terms of initiatives and financial growth?
So we've invested a lot in the last 3 years in terms of our structure, in terms of the quality of our services. We're really focused on growing them. We've got a really good, strong pipeline of work where we want to be the preferred employer and supplier in our area. We really want to work more closely with people who are receiving care, because I really think this is about working closely with people to improve their quality of life, and it's not just about creating dependence on care services. It's really about supporting people's independence. So that we've got really strong ambitions in that area, and that means working alongside a lot of the technological developments. With some of the work we've done through COVID, I was involved with the Digital Health Institute in Scotland in developing the COVID decision apps for care homes, and they're now working on tools for care at home. So that's the sort of work that we want to be involved in. We have a large client base who could benefit from, you know, getting access to those sort of technologies that would help improve people's quality of life. So very motivated really to improve the sort of care delivery that we're able to offer people.
Could you tell me about some of those technologies and how they could benefit people potentially?
So some of these technologies are around palliative care, for instance, so ensuring that people with palliative care needs are receiving the right medication supports, the right psychological supports, you know, the right health supports. Just now, a lot of services don't get the opportunity to talk to each other properly, but by using some of these decision-making apps, then the data will be centralised and professionals will share information, but the person who's receiving care will have more access to their own care package and be able to make better decisions for their own life rather than people doing for them. You know, so these are the sort of tools that are being developed that we're very keen as a service to be helping people to access.
Yeah, it's about delivering better outcomes then.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And so what are your long-term ambitions for the company post-pandemic?
So post-pandemic, we'd like to build on our strong track record of growth. We've got ambitions across the UK and Europe. I think really it's the model of care that we deliver and making sure that we're delivering the type of holistic care services that people really want. And so I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we would hope to have expanded our business to other areas of the UK and hopefully into Europe.
Okay. So how many branches do you have at the moment in Scotland?
So we've got 3 large hubs in Scotland serving 9 local authority areas just now.
Okay.
And you want of the population of Scotland live in the West, so you know it's where the population is that requires these kind of care supports.
Yeah, and where do you want to start with your expansion?
Well, the northeast of England is probably closest to us and probably the easiest for us to access in terms of building the structures. So that really is where we're sort of looking at the moment.
Okay, that's really exciting. I think on that note, I think that's everything I need, unless there's anything you want to talk about that we haven't touched on.
I don't think there's enough awareness generally in the sort of public domain about sustainability and how important it is for all these nations to build the capacity of care organisations for the future, because it's really important. The demand, if you look at the demographic trends, we're going to require to deliver care to millions and millions of people, and it's really important that we get behind these care organisations and support their growth and development, because population of our countries will require that care. And I don't think that message is conveyed clearly enough to people, and that's really important that we start to convey that message about the real importance, the real value of social care and why it's needed. It's not just about rewarding workforce and being able to provide care. It's actually the nations will need a huge increase in the number of well-positioned, well-trained organisations that can deliver these kind of supports.